Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic all the way from the Gold Coast. I hope you're having an absolutely sensational week wherever you are in this planet of ours. We're gearing up here for another rain event. It seems to be every second week we seem to be heading up for another rain event here on the Gold Coast. But look, it's our wet season, so we're not going to complain. It's a really, really interesting time going on around in the globe at the moment. There's lots of weather events, lots of earthquakes, bushfires, floods, you name it. And it's sort of like I keep getting messages in my inbox, Amanda, what does this mean? Look, I'm not a meteorologist. I can only say to you that, you know, obviously the planet is readjusting and we've got to start taking a little bit of notice of global warming. You know, I've been an advocate for that for many, many years, and we're now starting to reap the rewards of us not paying attention to what Mother Nature wants us to do. So, you know, it's not, yes, it is up to governments and things like that, but it's also up to individuals to sort of take some responsibility and look at reducing their land waste and things like that, you know, saying no to the packaging and things like that that are causing, you know, are contributing to global warming, you know, like think before you hop in the car, things like that, that we can all make small adjustments, which will help Mother Nature sort of rebalance the planet. So that's my little soapbox for the week. So here's the Simply Tarot card of the week. Now, this is a really interesting card because it's one of those sort of ambiguous cards that a lot of my students get confused with because it's the Two of Swords and it sort of says peace and harmony. And they used to say to me, well, how can it be peace and harmony when you've got a blindfold on? But I'll explain that in a minute. So peace and harmony, needing to take the blindfold off and keep reassessing the situation at hand. Now, there's many times in our lives where we're feeling a little bit like this, as if we're walking through life blindfolded, even though we've got the swords there, they're not actually crossing us, they're just sort of there to sort of, I suppose, give us a little bit of guidance. And it's also sort of, if you're not able to see it on the screen, but very close underneath the blindfold, she is actually peeking out just underneath it. So it's giving her that opportunity to constantly reassess the situations or the issues that are going on in life. Nothing is set in concrete. We have the ability to maybe take a new path or look at it through a fresh set of eyes. So it's a fluid situation. It's actually quite a positive card because this card comes out in a reading. It says, okay, you've got a little bit of a peaceful reprieve here to sit down, look at the situation, reassess it, make sure that you're on the right path, make sure it's the best possible fit for you. Is there anything that you need to modify, change, maybe put it off, you know, look for another timing, whatever the case may be? It's giving you that little bit of opportunity there to reassess the situation. And, you know, you can see the peaceful water behind her. So she's got her back to the peaceful water. So it's not as if she's feeling threatened in any way. It's more of a personal thing. It's more of something that's going on in her life, in her head, that she needs to assess. It's not necessarily something that's going on around her. So it's a very, very interesting card. So if that comes out in a reading for you, just stop, look and listen and ask yourself what it is that you need to be sort of reassessing in your life. So we've got a big week astrologically this week, as we do every week here on the show. So the sun is currently in Aries. It won't be there for much longer. So happy birthday to all the Aries. I mean, it's a very exciting time of the year because it's the astrological new year. It's the beginning of the astrology year when the sun enters into Aries. And I always find it a very uplifting time of the year. I suppose possibly because I'm a fire sign and then sort of the energy sort of resonates with me. But to me, it's sort of like we've got over the new year. We've got over the New Year's resolutions. We've had the Chinese New Year. And then we come to the astrology new year and it's like, wow, I'm ready now. I'm ready to take the bull by the horns. I'm ready for action. So that's a good sign. So no matter what your star sign is, we can all celebrate in the astrology new years. So we have the planet Neptune has just moved into Aries. Now, this is a major thing because Neptune's going to be here for quite some time. But I want to clarify, Neptune will only be visiting Aries till about October, November this year. Then he'll slip back into Pisces again for a little time. Quite often, it's not uncommon for a planet to go forward and then go retrograde 2 or 3 or 4 times before it actually beds into the new sign. So Neptune in Aries is going to seem a little bit uncomfortable to begin with because Neptune is the planet of creativity, of illusion, delusions that are getting in touch with our creative side of ourselves. And sometimes, yes, we can delude ourselves or others, but it's not the major thrust of Neptune. To me, I like to look at Neptune as the opportunity to be creative, to get in our own head, to daydream, to stare out the window, to sort of, you know, be a little bit like Peter Pan and go off into fairyland and sort of see what Neverland might bring us. And then we come back into reality and we try and bring that back into our day-to-day lives and apply it in a practical, logical sort of manner. So Neptune in Aries is going to feel a little bit uncomfortable because Neptune is so creative and Aries is sort of so go-getting. Aries doesn't really like to be creative. He wants to be up, off, out the door, let's do it. Being the first sign of the zodiac, wants to get everybody motivated, up off the couch, let's go. So it's sort of almost in a sense like a conflict of interest because the creative side is trying to sneak through or sort of trying to push through and become the dominant energy of Aries. But the Aries sun is saying, hang on a minute, but what about me? I'm me first. I'm important. I'm the most important person in this race. So I think it's going to be a little bit of adjustment there for Aries people to sort of blend the two together and not necessarily see it as a competition, but see it as, well, okay, this is another dimension. It's another layer. You know, I might allow Neptune to take over for a couple of hours and then I might let the sun take over for a couple of hours or whatever. You know, they can live together in harmony. But as I said, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. So it's roughly about October, I think, from memory, that it goes retrograde, and it'll go retrograde for a couple of months. And then, you know, we'll have these adjustments going on and we'll talk about it on the show as Neptune moves from one sign to the other. Now, at the moment, the predominance is on I should go back and say, look, with Neptune slipping into Aries, it will affect fire signs more than the other signs. So Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, the opposite sign of Libra, but it will wash over the other signs too. So if you're feeling as if your creative juices are flowing 1 minute and somebody's turned the tap or the faucet off next, that's the reasons why, because Neptune's trying to adjust and find his feet sitting in Aries. So just be a little bit patient with yourself. If the creative juices aren't flowing, go for a walk, feed the dog, do some dusting, do something else, take your mind off it for a few minutes and come back and you'll probably find it's realigned. So the next area that we're going to be looking at is there's still a lot of planetary configurations and energy sitting in Pisces. So when we're talking about the Pisces energy, we're predominantly talking about water signs, which is Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, and the opposite sign of Virgo. But this is also washing over the remaining 8 signs. So maybe not quite as intense, but it is still there for each and every one of us to sort of understand and work with the energy. So we're starting off with Saturn, the planet of discipline, the father figure, the planet that gives us that stickability, that makes us determined or stubborn sometimes to sort of achieve and to achieve well. And we're looking for sort of solid results here. We're not necessarily looking for a fly-by-night situation. We're looking for something that we can implement for a long period of time, that will give us structure in our lives, that will help us sort of find a direction and sort of say, this is my path, this is my road that I'm on, and I'm going to be here for quite a long time. So I'm going to have to get used to being a little bit patient and working diligently towards what I'm trying to achieve. Now, Saturn here is conjunct or holding hands with what's known as the North Node. Now, the North Node is not a planet. It's connected to the moon, and it's showing us on a karmic level what we're all aspiring to achieve. Now, the North Node is hopefully showing us the way forward. Now, sometimes when we've got a heavy planet like, or a strong planet like Saturn conjuncting the North Node, it can sort of make it feel very intense. It can make it feel sort of as if the direction that I'm heading in is arduous sort of work. It's slow, deliberate, definite. I've got to take my steps very carefully. And rightly so, it is asking for all that, but it's also asking for you to sprinkle a little bit of that Pisces energy in there, of that creative energy, of sort of allowing yourself to be, you know, in another dimension sometimes, and that will show you the pathway forward. That, you know, sometimes we've got to put our creative hat on to find solutions in our day-to-day life. And I think as we mature as adults, we forget that childlike, playful sort of imagination type energy. We need to bring a little bit more of that in here. That's really, really important. And, you know, not to be completely in that, we've got to be in a grown-up mindset as well, but we can have both. And, you know, we can blend the both together. And if things get too tough, then take ourselves out into a little bit of that creative mindset and then come back and sort of apply it in a logical, practical, grown-up sort of way. Now, we also have the North Node conjunct Venus. Now, Venus is the planet of love and affection, and this is where we find the things in a chart that we love to do. It's not necessarily, are we always searching for a partner? It can sometimes just be the things that bring us pleasure, things that make us smile, things that make our heart sing, that, we feel really comfortable with. So with this, I'm also suggesting it, yes, it could be a new love if you're seeking new love, but it can also be about looking for something that really brings you pleasure in life, something that you really enjoy doing, and something that you want to do with your life. It's really, really important. Now, we also have Venus conjunct Mercury. Now, Mercury is retrograde, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But with Venus here conjuncting Mercury, we have to be careful if we're having conversations with loved ones or people that we're closest to, making sure that they fully understand from our point of view, and that make sure that we listen to them. Now, Mercury is the planet of communication. He is going backwards or retrograde at the moment until April 7, so another few days, another less than a week. Now, anytime Mercury goes retrograde, this is when we can expect complications with anything to do with or connected to communication. Your cell phone can break down, your laptop goes AWOL. You might have to keep rebooting your computer because things just aren't functioning properly within programs. People don't have their listening ears on. People say, yeah, I'm listening. No, they're not. Ask them to repeat what you just said. And it might seem arduous to do that, but if it's in a very important conversation, you have to make sure that they are fully listening, fully understand, and fully absorb what you're saying before we can proceed forward. This is not the time to go to the bank manager for a loan, not the time to ask for a raise at work and things like that, not to have important conversations unless they're absolutely desperately necessary. In the olden days, when we used to send things by snail mail, I used to teach my students this is not the time to send that important letter, that important parcel, because it's probably going to get lost 9 times out of 10. This is the time, if you're traveling, make sure that you leave extra time, because there will be mix-ups at airports, bus stations, train terminals, boat terminals, all those sort of things. Things will be running late, or luggage will get lost, or your ticketing's got the wrong date on it and the wrong flight. All those things are possible. So make sure that you triple check these things. I know it might sound silly, but it's important. If you've booked a ticket and you've printed it out online, then make sure, or to your device, that make sure that it's got the right dates and the right travel destination that you're going to. Much easier to sort it out before you leave home than trying to stand at a terminal and arguing with somebody saying, but I did book it for this particular date. Why is it coming up on your screen and on my ticket and it says it's wrong? So, just make sure that we're very careful with our communication, and this washes over all the signs. This is very intense for each of the 12 signs. It's not just for Pisces and the water signs, it's for all of us. So be aware of that. As I said, less than a week to go. Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, and it's a time to sort of slow down. Sometimes I find I do my best thinking or make my best plans under a Mercury retrograde because I'm allowing my mind to be still. So maybe that's something that you could do, and just see what wanders in and out of your mind. Write it down, take some notes, and come back to it in a week or so and see what manifests out of it. It can be a very important time. Now, we also have another configuration here of a number of planets together that I want to speak about. Now, these are going to be sort of fairly fast moving, and they're in Gemini. So it's Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, and the opposite sign of Sagittarius, but then washing over to the remaining 8 signs. So we've got the moon conjunct or holding hands, which is the emotional planet. The moon only stays in a sign for about 2.5 days maximum. So it's a very fast moving sort of energy. It can be here 1 minute and gone the next. Is holding hands or conjunct what's known as the part of fortune, which is known as an Arabian part. So what the moon is trying to do here is to stir things up a little bit on an emotional front and sort of say to you, okay, you can have everything that you want if you're really honest with yourself on an emotional level. So it's not necessarily saying we can have material things, but it's sort of almost like the opportunity to have a breakthrough on an emotional front. If something's been troubling you or bothering you, this might be the time, by just thinking outside the square or having a conversation with someone else, that you'll get that breakthrough that you've been looking for. So these are conjunct Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion and opportunity, are sitting in Gemini, tiny little bit wide. So what that means is it's not quite as intense as it would have been normally, but it's still quite powerful. So it's sort of saying, there's opportunities there. There's opportunities for expansion, but maybe sometimes we've got to just work with our emotions, or let our emotions go and see where they take us. And sometimes by having a conversation or discussing it with a friend can be the sort of, oh, hang on a minute, I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I'll look at that. And that's the expansion or the opportunity that Jupiter is bringing. So it's sort of asking you to sort of, go with the snap of the fingers. Conversations or ideas can change momentarily very, very quickly. So just be aware for that things can sort of change that quickly. Finally, Uranus is still sitting in Taurus. For the earth signs, that's Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, and the opposite sign of Scorpio. Be aware that things are still happening quite suddenly in your life. Uranus is like the bolt of lightning, can come out of nowhere, is asking you to get your life on track. Now, many of you I know have had incidences or things that have happened recently that, particularly this year, that came out of nowhere, that have sort of sent your life into a different direction. And you're sort of kicking and screaming and saying, well, where did that come from? Well, where it came from was you were ignoring the energy, you were ignoring the signs. So Uranus came along and said, right, I've had enough, bang, this is it. This is where the changes are coming in. So if you haven't had anything dramatic, then obviously you're doing the right thing. You're learning, you're working with the energy of Uranus, but don't say that you're out of the woods yet if you're one of those signs, because sometimes I think we can become a bit complacent thinking, yes, I've been a good person, I've done everything that's been asked of me, and then bang, in will come Uranus and say, no, but you missed this bit. So just be very aware of that. Yes, it will wash over to the other signs, but nowhere near as intense as those first four that I mentioned. We're going to take our first caller, is Phyllis in Dunlick in Maryland. Are you there, Phyllis?
Yes, I am. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, sweetie. Do you have a question I can answer for you, Phyllis?
Yeah, I have a daughter that's in a very toxic marriage. Can you see anything happening to her?
I actually feel that by the end of this year, that marriage will be over. But I'm going to warn you, Mum, that you've got to keep your mouth zipped. You can't put your opinion or your interpretation into what she should or shouldn't do. Be there, be supportive. If she comes to you and she's crying or she's having a bad day and she's talking about what's gone on, just say, oh, yes, okay, dear. Oh, well, I'm here. But don't offer any words of advice, because the moment you do that, she gets her heckles up and then she goes more towards him, because that's how he's programmed her. So we don't want to give him any extra power. He's not a nice man. Look, I'm hesitant to say that. Yeah, I'm hesitant to say that he hasn't put his hands on her. I'm not sure whether he has or he hasn't physically, but I wouldn't like to see that happen.
I know she's afraid of him.
Yeah, she is afraid of him. Look, I'm not going to say that I think he's physically hurt her at this point, but what I'm saying is he's capable of doing it. So the least that we can do to fuel that fire, the better. Yes, he is controlling, and she sort of is frightened of him, but she doesn't sort of want to admit that to anybody else. She just sort of says, oh, well, I'm doing what I should do as a dutiful wife. Well, that's all well and fine, but this love, honour and obey rubbish went out a long time ago as far as I'm concerned. She's entitled to have some opinions, but he doesn't sort of see it that way. He sees it as like she's his possession. She's got to do as she's told. She's got to do things when he says that she can do things. But interestingly enough, he's going to be the one to call the end to the marriage. And that's going to come quite suddenly. Now, usually when people call an end to a marriage, and particularly somebody that's so controlling like your son-in-law, there's usually a reason or a trigger for that. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they've met somebody else that, has caught their fancy, that they think that they can control them, like they're a better option. I just sort of feel I'm not necessarily saying he's met somebody else, but what I'm saying is he doesn't seem to get the same satisfaction out of controlling your daughter anymore. It's like, how can I put this? She does as she's told, but there's no emotion in her anymore, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I know he's living a double life.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised by that. But what I'm saying is, from his standpoint, your daughter is doing as she's told, but there's no pleasure in it for him anymore. Like, he's not getting the pleasure of seeing her upset or crying or whatever. She's sort of put herself almost into a bubble where she doesn't react anymore. and that's not giving him the reward for the way he treats her, if that makes any sense. But, if you said
Right.
he's leading a double life, then that's good, because I do think that they didn't show me definitely that he was going to go to someone else, but they showed me he was going to make a sudden announcement that he's had enough of this marriage. It's not what he wanted. He's never loved her, and he's going to be quite cruel with the things that he says. But look, they're words. If he decides to pack his
Right.
bags and move out suddenly, look, we'll all throw a party, I think, because it'll be the best thing, the best present he's ever given your daughter. And yes, she'll be upset at the time about it, and that's normal, but she will be able to rebuild her life. And I think the most important thing that you need to know, Phyllis, is that your daughter will go on to meet somebody who will really treasure her and really treat her with respect. But it will take a couple of years after this marriage is over. So the best thing that you can do, Mum, is just listen, don't offer an opinion, and just say, I'm always here for you. And if you do that, then she knows that you're there, that your support hasn't wavered, and that's really important. So I hope that's helped you, Phyllis.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, lovely to talk to you. So it's always a tragedy when parents have to sit back and watch a child, a loved one. They're going through a really difficult relationship. The first thing that you want to do is go and protect your child, no matter how old they are. And that's just the role of a parent, whether you're mum or dad. And it's really difficult to know that, you can see your child struggling and in pain. And all as you can do is sit back and sort of try and help them the best that you can. But it's really difficult sometimes. So my heart goes out to Phyllis. I know what it's like to be in that situation. I've worked with many people over the years that have had children in crisis situations like that. And, with this particular husband, it's until he decides to move on that he's not going to set Phyllis's daughter free. So we're going to talk with Lorna now in La Cruz in New Mexico. Are you there, Lorna?
I am. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sweetie. Do you have a question I can answer for you?
I do. Our life has been a roller coaster the last 2 years or so, moving and all of this. We just made an offer on a house. It was accepted. And just wondering how the next year or two looks as far as that house goes that we purchased.
I think as far as the houses goes, I mean, once you've moved in and settled and unpacked and all that sort of thing, I think you're going to keep pinching yourself saying, is this real? This is amazing. I feel so alive. I feel so happy. And that's good, because I think, when you started talking about the roller coaster, they actually showed me a roller coaster in my mind of things going up and down and up and down. Well, I'm pleased to say there won't be that much of that in the coming, next 12 months. Be a little bit, and that's sort of what you're intending to do, the changes that you might want to make or buy a new couch or whatever. But this next house that you've just put the offer in on, to me, it's got a lucky vibe about it. It feels happy. It feels like a home. It feels like when I move in there with the boxes and start unpacking, it's like, oh, I can exhale. I'm finally home. And that's a good thing, because I don't think, Lorna, that you felt like that you've been home in yourself for a very, very, very long time. So this will be nice to be able to sort of really finally unpack in your mind and say, I'm here. Which one of you is looking for the new job?
I'm always looking for a new enterprise.
Right.
My husband, I would say me.
Right. Yeah, but I'm going to say I think he's also sort of, I don't know that he's ready to make a change, but he's happy to have a little bit of a look. I think because he's going to be feeling so settled in the house, he's sort of then looking at other areas of his life and saying, well, am I really happy with the job, or will I have a little bit of a look on the job boards and see what's available? I don't think he'll make a change, but I think he'll satisfy himself by having a look. You know what I mean? He's just going to have a little look. But when you say a new enterprise, are you always on the look for something new as far as a business potential, or not just a job?
Yes, no, not just a job. I've owned a couple of businesses over the years. I just always like working for myself, and I have this lavender spray. I call it an energetic cleanser that I make, and I feel like just want to give it away. Actually, what I'd like to do, but it costs. So I'm thinking about that.
Yeah, no, and in my experience, Lorna, you shouldn't give anything away, because then there's not the exchange of energy. People used to say to me when I first got into the psychic industry, why do you charge for readings? And I'd say, well, I still need to eat. I've got to pay the, the utility bills, the phone bill, the this bill and that bill. When they start giving me that for free, then I'll give my readings away for free. So you've got to look at, your time, your energy, your ingredients go into it. There's got to be the right transfer of energy. If you decide to give it away as a gift, that's different. But you don't do that all the time. Now, they were showing me something coming up around August, Lorna, that there was sort of like a new opportunity or a new thought pattern or something that you were going to be exploring then, but I didn't necessarily feel it was going to start then. It was like, oh, that could be good. And it's sort of like I'm going to do a little bit more research and delve into it a little bit more. But this house that you're moving into seems to attract money, and not just from one source. It'll come from many different sources. So don't be surprised if the lavender is just the beginning point, that there'll be other things that will sort of be attracted to it, that we end up with quite a nice little side hustle, with an eBay shop or something like that, where you're selling your products and it's starting to get momentum. But to me, there's more to come. They're showing me that in past lives, you were a healer. I don't know how you feel about that in this current life.
I worked as a reader for about the last 14 years. I retired a couple of years ago.
Right.
And so I've always had a communication with so I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but you never really sort of branched into some sort of healing modality with your clients?
No, I'm working on really more of a hobby right now with a gal who is a Reiki master, and working with her on and off. Yes. Yeah,
because they were showing me that, at least 3 past lives where you'd been a healer and they wanted you to get more back into that. I mean, I know being a psychic, you're healing people's emotions, but they were sort of showing me more the physical ailments that they wanted you to get into. So just keep going on the path. This house is going to talk to you. This house is going to guide you to where you need to go, Lorna. So I hope that's helped you. We've come to the end of the show. It was lovely to talk with Lorna. Lots of people are going into lots of new, different, exciting opportunities around the planet at the moment, and it's a very exciting time, with Pluto and Aquarius, and it's sort of shaking things up a little bit, but it's shaking things up in some ways for people to sort of tap into their past lives in a way and move forward. Now, this week I want to leave you with one of my favourite songs, and one of the people that I've had the good fortune of seeing a couple of times in concert. Absolutely amazing singer, beautiful songwriter. And, I think he really epitomizes the Aquarian energy. He doesn't sort of take any BS from anybody, and he likes just being himself. And I can remember going to see him at a concert. He hadn't been to Australia for 25 years, and he apologised that he hadn't been back in a while, but I'm glad you're here tonight. The one and only Neil Diamond. And I'm going to leave you with one of his most powerful songs that he ever wrote and recorded, I Am, I Said. And I think that says it all. Until next week, bye for now.